agriculture is wrong, but how can we change it when the very instruments of power, the political parties, the governments that run the world, are all being funded by the corporate sector, which go on reaping their profits from this mechanisation of not just agriculture but industry in general and human society, and have now, digitised human behaviour in the form of surveillance capitalism. So how can we, the resistance, the organics, the greens, where can we stand? We have no platform to stand on because our very institutions, our countries, our governments have been hijacked by these corporate interests which are seeing no wish to reform. No. Indeed, on the contrary, and they want to go on investing in weapons and so on, and do the odd war from time to time. Anyway, Colin he's a deep thinker, I can tell that. I've not met him personally, but this was the first time, I've sort of encountered him in person. I've known his books for years. And that was a really important point he was making. And then we heard from Helen Mayer, I think her name, who runs the Soil Association in Britain, which I've been on and off a member of. It's an organic green pressure group that wants farmers to adopt organic farming. I mean, it's a lovely group. She herself is a farmer, Helen. She spoke very eloquently about trying to improve the diet of the nation of Britain, because by improving the food, because that will improve the general, health, and gradually you can, grow people of greater wisdom. And there is a link between diet and health and so on. I was fortunate to be brought up in a semi-vegetarian household where my parents were aware of all these things back in the 60s. And were aware of the importance of organic food. We always ate brown bread, etc. as a family, and shopped at the health food shop in Brighton, which is now the great Infinity Foods. I hope it's still going. Brighton is a pioneer of this stuff. So thank you. She spoke brilliantly, and it was a tour de force, this conference, and I think there was another speaker as well. There was a third speaker who was that? If I can find the other speaker. Anyway, it'll come back to me. So, and there were questions and discussions, and I asked a question which I think was understood, and it was impossible to ask it and to bring out the implications in the short time we had. So I'm going to share that now, but their answers were interesting. So the question I asked was, as an educator, and I founded the Green University, and I've been involved in peace education for many years, working at the University of London and now autonomously, and I've lectured at Oxford, and I've seen, and then in the school sector. And so my question was, and it's a question that I put to the universe, is if Vandana's right, and I think she is, that this model of hyper-specialisation in agriculture, monoculturalism, is what's responsible for the chaos of the world and the suppression of indigenous pluralism, both in farming and everything else. How can we unthink that system when it's so pervasive? It runs our educational structures. And I pointed out that this sort of monoculturalism in agriculture is reflected in academia. To become an academic, you have to become a specialist. You have to do a PhD in some one specific little field of knowledge. And they're getting smaller and smaller, Now, to be counted as a serious thinker, therefore, a serious intellectual, you have to become a hyper-specialist. You have to buy into that system of monoculturalism, right? So how can we ever change the system when each generation of new students that goes into the academic mill has to specialise to survive, to get their postings? We can't, and so I said, look, the problem is we don't create enough people that can think about wholeness, that think about the joined upness of different fields of knowledge. We become hyper-specialised. I'm a sociologist of 18th century France, I'm an economist of 19th century Germany. I'm a religious studies expert on Japanese Shintoism in the 18th century. You know, and the PhD becomes narrower and narrower. So I couldn't even do a PhD on Shintoism in the 19th century. It would be one or two thinkers within that. Or I can't do a thesis on romantic poetry and pilgrimage. No, I have to look at just one poet, you know, etc. So given that, how are we going to do the thinking, the joined up thinking that's needed for the reassertion of, you know, primordial wisdom, be it in agriculture or in education and so on? Anyway, that was my question, and I also said, what word would you use to describe people that do joined up thinking, holistic thinking? I mean, the answer is a philosopher. It was a sort of trick question. Vandana answered it brilliantly, because she said, no, there isn't one word, Thomas, there's a whole variety of words. That's the point of her argument, that biodiversity prevails. And she is technically correct. There's words for philosophers in every language on the planet. Seer, shaman, magician, holistic thinker, you know, these are all words. And I produced, she didn't know this, but I produced the only comparative linguistic dictionary of philosophy that's still available on the planet. I should send her a copy. Anyway, and then there was brilliant discussion afterwards. So it was a really great event. Thank you so much to David Lorimer for organising it, and the Scientific and Medical Network, which I've supported for many years. And it was, yeah, a moving event. I hope it will become available. I'll post it on my you know, Facebook page and so on if it is. A couple of other things I've been up to. I'm still working with the Delphic Games in correspondence with Christian Kirsch, who runs it from Berlin. We're planning various things to develop the Delphic Games. There's a flag that he sent me here, which shows the interlockingness. And the Delphic Games celebrate the arts, including the intellectual arts, rather than just the physical sports that the Olympic Games celebrate. So between us and with other colleagues, we're intent on reviving them, which I think is long overdue. So it was a very moving, week, really. We've also, during this week, had, of course, the G7 meeting in Cornwall. I'm very pleased that Biden has been trying to correct the ignorant advisors behind Brexit, Johnson and his wreckers. The destabilisation they've caused to Europe is incalculable, and to the UK. I just hope, I mean, I'm not sure the guy is capable of learning anything. It's so shocking to watch somebody having to learn on the job. I mean, people like this shouldn't be in positions of statesmanship or responsibility. I mean, this is a wrecker who's taken over the British government and has no sensitivity to Ireland, to Scotland. I think Biden, who is part Irish like me, he is wise and will have told him a few home truths. So will Macron. They're meeting as I speak, and I just hope they're, you know, I just hope that finally, I mean, the only way out of the dilemma over Ireland, there are two ways out, really. I mean, they're trying to tinker with detail, but then no, you know, there are two ways out of this. One is to allow the people of Ireland to have their referendum promised under the Good Friday Agreement if they want to rejoin the Republic. It's as simple as that. Today we celebrate Douglas Hyde, the first president of the Irish Republic. A great man, a great scholar. Well, let the people of Northern Ireland say, in a referendum, whether they want to join that republic and become part of that project, instead of being tacked on as a sort of third-rate member of a UK that's going downhill and is going to be left by Scotland very shortly. I mean, the UK is now a failed project as far as I'm concerned, because it was bought, monopolised and sold by Nigel Nicks and his Farage and his Trumpists and this hard right Netanyahu supporting crazy cabal, actually. And the BBC is complicit in all that. So, you know, I don't think the UK can be or is worth saving anymore. I think, no. The Irish deserve their chance for a referendum on Irish unity. Sinn Féin, that's their position. All the Irish parties know what that agreement said. And that should be done. That's one way out. And then, you know, they would all become full members of the European Union and problem solved. And the people of Ireland, yes, there'd be a few unionists marching up and down, waving Union Jacks, but, you know, let them move to Liverpool or let them move to Scotland or something, or let them actually read their history books and learn about why Ireland is a project in the European Union worth joining, instead of this UK fantasy slave state, which has been revived by the Johnson Tories as a sort of, I don't know, fantasy in British neo-imperialism and military capitalism, you know, with their aircraft carriers sailing around the Pacific and their nuclear weapons fleets in the castle of the Muses, where I was able to look out over the mountain where they're all stored. So that's one way out. The other way is to give all the people of Britain and Ireland a second referendum. I personally would rather we all rejoined the European Union and kept together as a UK. You know, and if we rejoin the European Union as a whole country, that's fine, problem solved. All these problems go away. Those are two realistic solutions to this crisis. And I hope Biden and his advisors have actually pointed this out to Johnson. Okay, so that's, you know, my take on this Irish issue, and you can see where I'm coming from culturally and intellectually. I've also been doing some work on, when I lived in Scotland at the Castle of the Muses in Argyll, one of the worst features of it was the plagues of midges, like tiny little mosquito type things that really eat you alive. You couldn't go out for many months in the year, and yet you were eaten alive. I mean, literally, they would come and eat they would bite you. Horrendous thing, and it's all over Scotland in that west coast area. It makes any kind of gardening type stuff virtually impossible. Well, I've got wonderful news I can announce from France. An invention has been made by a French company called Quister, which absolutely knocks the problem of these midges on the head. It looks like a parking meter you buy. It's run by electricity. You put it up, and it knocks out all the midges and mosquitoes within about 60 square meters of one of those things. So that would clear a garden. And it's being marketed and made by a French company, French technology. You know, the sooner we ship them to Argyll, and I'm actually going to write to the authorities in Dunoon and other places where I lived, in Argyll, and just say they need to make a deal with Quister and get 100 of these machines brought over, because it would make life bearable for the people of the lochs of Argyll. So well done, the French company, and to me that's an example of pan-European need and technology and working together in symbiosis. And that's why it's such an absurd thing, Brexit, because no doubt they'll be twice as expensive if we're shipping them outside the European Union. Well, my own continuing fervent prayer is that Scotland will get its second referendum for independence and we'll vote for it, and this time we'll rejoin the European Union. I have a Now Scotland flag behind me. And you're talking to someone that did not vote for independence in the referendum in 2014. I thought the UK is best kept together. We can move the UK in a civilised direction. The Scottish nationalists are trying to move us too fast. We're not ready for that. Let's keep the UK together and move generally in a leftward direction. Well, what I didn't foresee was the military-style precision of the Westminster monster and its ability to manufacture fake truth into authentic narrative, which won their, anti-European Union project of Brexit. And that's why I've become an utter, total opponent of the lies that underpin that, and a supporter of our right to be joined up, to be, actually ultimately it's a right to be intelligent. The highest accolade that we humans can do to our Creator is to give thanks for intellect, for mind, and to give thanks to the divine intelligence that put us here. I can't be faithful, I can't look Max Muller and Bunsen and the Duke of Argyll in the face when I meet them in the Heavenly Library and say, oh yeah, Brexit, brilliant thing, smash up the UK, let's all just, fall apart and become little selfish capitalists. No, we're transcontinental thinkers of global interconnectedness. That's what philosophers are. That's what Pythagoras was, that's what Plato was. That's what these people are who are my heroes. And that's what the Delphic Games are all about. Let's have a games in Europe, in Delphi, the holiest shrine in ancient Europe, during which all wars cease, all countries declare ceasefire to participate in the games. And they celebrate there the arts, fine arts, music, dancing, theatre, poetry, etc. And what's not to like about that? It's under Apollo, the god of Delphi, with the 9 Muses, who are his helpers in creating a world of beauty and magic and logic and science. I mean, Apollo is the god of philosophy, actually. Although his, so blessings on the Delphic Games. I will be working with that. And Christian will be joining us during the 21st Stonehenge Festival that I'm going to talk about shortly. In fact, I'll mention that now. As you know, as the Archdruid of the Peace Druids of Europe and Britain, I'm involved in the Stonehenge Peace Festival again this year. We had it last year for 24 hours. Many speakers came. We're going to do it for 12 hours this year, which is still quite a long time, all night. The government has been humming and hawing. Are we going to be able to go into the stones or not? I've said all along I think they're going to cancel it because of the Indian variant. It's too dangerous. They won't allow that festival to take place. But we're doing one online anyway. You can join it. Just, look at my Facebook page or send me an email. And I'll send you the Zoom codes. And we're going to have speakers, poets, musicians, philosophers. It'll be like a mini Delphic Games, but honouring Stonehenge. You see, Stonehenge was called the Temple of Apollo by the Greeks. They were not fools. When Greek explorers discovered Britannia, found the stones, they said, well, it's a temple to Apollo. Well, the Celts didn't use the term Apollo. They used Luch, the sun god, and also Bel, who was the sun god. And it was a temple to the sun god, who is both Bel and Luch. And, the Druids and the Greeks got on really well. And many Greek scholars talked about the Druids. That's in my Encyclopedia of Druid Studies. I've gone into that for the first time. Looked at all the classical sources, who wrote about the Druids, who met them. We know that Abaris was a Druid who went down and met Pythagoras, for instance, from the Hyperboreans. Now, the Hyperboreans were the people of Britain, the far north, and Stonehenge was their temple. So, we're having an Apollo festival around Stonehenge on the 20th, 21st, starting at 9 p.m. in the evening on the 20th, through to 9 a.m. in the morning on the 21st. If there was a real live access to Stonehenge, that's when it would be meeting. As I say, I think it's going to be cancelled, but who knows? I hope I'm wrong, and I hope my friends can go, people like Arthur and Rollo Morphling and so on. Let's hope they can get in, but I think probably they won't be allowed to, and we'll have to do it on Zoom instead. And we're going to be focusing on peace, which to me, as a peace druid, is the quintessence of what a druid stands for. These druids never fought. They were not people of violence. They didn't do even, you know, like skullduggery and poisoning and all the stuff that, you know, CIA types do. No, we are people of honour. We tell the truth, we witness the truth, and we love the truth, like Iolo Morganwg said. A druid is a seer and not an intelligence agent, but a wisdom agent. They appointed the kings and monarchs of the Celtic world, and they were the architects, designers, educators, judges, and philosophers of, you know, the Celtic people, and still are. So anyway, there we are. Thank you. Come and join us. Talking about wonderful European developments, I just want to say, reading the local papers here in La Creuse, there's a new company started up called Greenleaf, which is determined to put hemp farming at the heart of French agriculture. And the chap points out that in the 19th century, there were 178,000 hectares of cannabis being grown across France. Even way back in the time of Charlemagne, Charlemagne said growing hemp is a thing of national, well, imperial security. So hemp is not a foreign crop, it's an indigenous plant that has been grown for centuries. The people that outlawed it and made it, now it's down to 17,000 hectares, are the same people that brought us agroculture, monoculture, and that brought pesticides and the pharmaceutical industry. Instead of allowing us to have our indigenous plants that bring healing, we have to buy plants from the, you know, derivatives from the pharmacists at great cost. And hemp was too dangerous for them because it's got so many properties, so many medicinal and spiritual properties even. Anyway, this chap, company Greenleaf, down the road from me, flourishing. They hit the local papers. They're now selling hemp products all over France and want to get the European Union to, you know, make it a thing across the whole of Europe, and it will be. It's already been relaxed, the laws on this. So that's very exciting, and it's being used for all kinds of products, culinary, herbal medicines, you name it. So there we are. You know, one of the wonderful things about Europe is that when it does things, it does it in style, with a certain largesse. Well, excellent. Let's do it. And then, talking of largesse, I want to talk about the goddess briefly, because as a philosopher, I'm sworn to being a devotee of the goddess of wisdom, Sophia. I'm a lover of Sophia, Athena, Minerva, whatever name you know her by, Sarasvati. She's the goddess of wisdom, but she takes form in all the goddesses. All the goddesses are manifestations of Sarasvati, just as all the gods are manifestations of Brahma, her consort. And interestingly, doing some research on Baltic pagan traditions, and I've had a couple of Baltic visitors here, one from Latvia and so on. In the Baltic religion, the goddesses were very important, and you know, they survived in the Baltic traditions right up until, well, they've revived now. They were briefly squashed, but the pagans in the Baltics, Lithuanians and Latvians and Estonians, they still love their goddesses. And Zemlya was the name of the, you know, Latvian goddess, which is also the same name as the mother of Dionysus. Now, Dionysus is like the twin brother of Apollo, effectively. He's the god that likes to come out at night, to party, to dance, to drink wine, to explore ecstasy. He's the god that dies and is reborn. He's the god of the sacraments of the Christian cup of wine, you know. That's all Dionysus stuff. And Nietzsche was right when he said we should do Apollo and Dionysus. I personally am a devotee of both Apollo and Dionysus. And the mother of Dionysus, Semnia, who is or Semele she was called, who is the goddess. Now, the goddess is both incredibly complicated and simple at the same time. Now, how's that possible? How can you have something that's really complex and really simple? Well, I've coined a new word this week to sum up what I'm talking about, and that is simplexity, which I think is a really cool word. So simplexity is something that's so unbelievably complicated, like a goddess, dare I say it, like a woman, unbelievably complicated. I mean, each woman is a little mini goddess, and unbelievably complicated. The stuff of all the novels of history, right? They're so complicated that they're actually quite simple. The only way to make sense of complexity is to simplify it. And that gift, that ability to turn really complex stuff into simple stuff, is what I call simplexity. And to me, that's about, the religions of the world can be harmonized, absolutely, using my periodic table, and that developed from my work as a mediator in religious conflicts. I know there is a common core underlying all the religions and all the philosophies, and that common core is the goddess of wisdom and her consort, the god of wisdom. Now, they all have different names in every religion and language. None of them is the only name. As Vandana Shiva said to my question, what is the name for the person that thinks the whole? Well, she said rightly, there isn't just one name, there are myriads of names. It's more the concept that we can find as the unity, and that's what Plato was saying. Behind the names are the ideas. So anyway, that the goddess is the only thing that will get us through this crisis we're facing as humanity. But for each of us have to make that inner pledge to wisdom and become true philosophers instead of Sophiophobes, terrified of wisdom, terrified of the goddess, suppress it, stamp on it, kill it, burn it. That's the people that brought us monocultural thinking, which is there's only one God. And then they fight over which is the only God. There's only the God of Islam. No, there's only the God of Judaism. No, there's only the God of Christianity. All these only gods are fake. I'm sorry, they're like ripples on the surface of the lake of infinite goddesshood. And they appear briefly, here's Islam, here's Judaism, here's whatever other so-called revealed religions, but they're all just waves on the infinite lake of the goddess. And my job as a philosopher is to point that out, as philosophers have done before me. Parmenides pointed this out a long time ago. Thales did. Heraclitus did. And Plato did. That's my lineage. And Pythagoras did. And Orpheus. So, having said all of which, I want to just say that actually what I'm saying is meta-orthodox, because this is not a heresy. This is inside the most orthodox of the most orthodox of all the traditions. You find this secret wisdom that I'm talking about hidden away behind the great Kabbalists and Sufis and philosophers of the traditions. And that's what I'm doing in my commentary on the Quran. I'm exploring how this wisdom gets to be and why it should be. It's time to bring it out. Right, so it's time to bring it out again. And my strategy for doing that is to do a commentary on all the great scriptures. I'm trying to show, literally, the goddess hiding within the Bible, the Gospels, the Torah, the Quran. I'm trying to prove scientifically that what I'm saying is not just sort of made up stuff. It's factual, it's scientific, and it's meta-orthodox. So I just want to share, I'm doing a commentary every day on the Quran, and it's going to take another 6 months to complete. This is a 10-year project I've been doing. Now, I recommend anyone who isn't a Muslim to listen to the whole of my commentary, study it, if you're interested in religions, that is. And I would also recommend everyone who is a Muslim to listen to it, who can understand English. It's only in English, because I think you'll learn some new stuff. It's pioneering stuff. This day I've been working on Surah 43, section 6, which is about Jesus. And it's really interesting. My commentary points out that Muhammad, although he was illiterate, had had the Gospels, or part of them, read to him. Probably almost certainly by Khadija, his wife and sponsor. Khadija was a kind of a Gnostic Christian, and she almost certainly was literate, and she would have had some of these texts. Now, I'm looking for the first ever really in-depth biographical study of Khadija, because those missing years of Muhammad's apprenticeship with Khadija, when he, as a young man, became first her business manager, and then her husband, and eventually matured, that's a long period of time, and that's formative to the birth of Islam. And all that time, Khadija was his teacher, sage, advisor, wife, lover, partner. Khadija's story, therefore, needs to be investigated and researched, and every single hadith, every single saying or teaching that is connected with Khadija's memory needs to be put together into a book. We need some PhDs to be done on Khadija, drawing on all the sources: Persian, Shia, Sufi, Sunni, Turkic, Ottoman, all the rest of them. I think there's a lot of what Muhammad becomes can be found there. So anyway, yes, that's where Muhammad got his love of Jesus from. And her cousin, Waraka, was from the same school. Waraka was a sort of Gnostic Christian living in the desert, who first, just outside Mecca, who first authenticated Muhammad's mission. He was blind, but he met Muhammad and he authenticated, no, this chap has a true revelation. That was a Gnostic Christian confirmation. So Christianity is deep inside the Quran and inside Islam, which is why I'm so upset that the Christians and the Muslims, every single one of us in the world, don't sign an immediate peace treaty stopping all wars between all Christians and all Muslims. We should be devoting ourselves to mutual study, scholarship and prayer. This demonization of Islam that's whipped up by the media is not orthodox, either in Christian or certainly not in Islamic sources. It's a fantasy warrior narrative that's been created by malevolent forces who actually don't want peace on the planet. Now, I'm taking them on because I'm the peace druid of Europe and a peace philosopher, and I'm vice president of Philosophers of Peace, so I'm speaking out against these military cabals who use military capitalism to create continual war, to keep us all in a state of shock. As philosophers have said, we suffer shock after shock after shock. 9/11, invasion of Iraq, Afghan invasions, bombings here, bombings there, terrorism everywhere. This is all military capitalism having fun, playing with us. Brexit was yet another of their manifestations. Well, I'm saying enough is enough, guys. Let's make peace here, and let's find a way for capitalism to be ethical. And if that's not possible, let's try socialism. Let's try and have some ethical capitalism mixed with ethical socialism. What's wrong with that? That'd be the best, combination, surely. Anyway, here we are, Surah 43. Where when Jesus, the son of Mary, is held up as an example, behold, thy people raise a clamour thereat in ridicule. And Jesus shall be a sign for the coming of the hour of judgment. Therefore have no doubt about the hour, but follow ye me. This is a straight way. When Jesus came with clear signs, he said, now have I come to you with wisdom, and in order to make clear to you some of the points on which you dispute. Therefore fear God and obey me.